Here's an overview I want you to have when we talk about the Form 9465. So you can see that this is basically an installment agreement request. And so part one of the form is pretty straightforward. So part one, first of all, you have to specify the form to which this installment agreement request applies to. So in our case here, we have Form 1040 and the year is the 2020. You'll always have to specify the form and the year. So you want to put your first name, last name, your social security number, and also if this is applicable to a joint, if this is a joint return, you want to put the spouse's also first name and initial and last name, as well as his or her social security number. And you want to put your address. So we're speaking about regular address, streets, city, zip, state, and so on and so forth. And so what you want to do here is that you want to also specify the name of your business. So basically, if this is applicable here, so and also the EIN of the business, and also the best time for the IRS to reach out if there is any question. So it's all about offering a layer of transparency, if you will. Okay, and so this is the first screenshot. The second screenshot I'm showing you here, you want to put the on line 7, the right number here. So and then you want to put the amount of any payments that you are making with this request. Remember, Form 9465 is basically an installment agreement request. If you want to make a payment alongside with this request, it's way better. That's what we recommend our viewers and clients to do anyway. And so on line 9, the amount owed here, so in our hypothetical case, we have $90,000 here. And line 10, you follow the math, the instructions on the screen, you have $1,250. Okay. And then line 11, you put 1,000. And so again, everything depends on your situation here. And by the way, if you have any questions regarding this specific Form 9465, let us know in the comment section and we'll get back to you. And one thing I want to say here is that you have to really understand that once you actually send this form to the IRS, you also have to put your banking information, for instance, a routing number, an account number, just in case you want to specify by which date you want to pay every single month. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. I want to show you also another parts of this Form 9465. So part 2. So part 2 here we have, so you can see, now this is not applicable to your situation, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. And it's one of those things where, as it says on the screen, you want to complete part 2 if all 3 conditions below apply. All 3 must apply. So you defaulted on an installment agreement in the last 12 months. You owe more than $25,000, but not more than $50,000. And the amount on line 11A or 11B is, if applicable, is less than 10. Okay, what you have on line 10. So again, here it's more like FYI, so you have a clear idea what I'm talking about. So this is part 2. So this is the first screenshot. The second screenshot here, you can see here, and it says here, complete lines 21 and 22 only if you have a spouse and meet certain conditions. If you don't have a spouse, go to line 23. But I wanted to show you again here, FYI, so you have a clear idea what I'm talking about. Now, chances are when you file your Form 9465, you do not have to actually fill out some of those sections, but it's always better to understand at least, FYI on an FYI basis, so you have a clear idea of what those sections relate to, just in case you might have to go back to those sections or even explain to somebody else what those sections relate to. One thing I also need to make sure is that in telling you is that when we talk about 9465, this is this agreement has legal force. In other words, once you agree on an amount and a date with the IRS where they should actually take money out of your account every month, you want to stick to that contract because it is a contract and the IRS doesn't really, they don't have time. Once they set it up, it's done automatically. Now, if you do not abide by your contractual obligations, you are exposing yourself to taxes, to additional taxes, to interest, to penalties, and so on and so forth. You do not want to mess with the IRS. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 9465. Let me give you the approach you need to really pay attention to when you think about Form 9465. It's important to really understand that Form 9465 actually it's a form you use to request a monthly installment agreement for if you are a taxpayer who is unable to pay your tax liabilities in full, right? In other words, this is a form that's for individuals and or businesses for that matter to set up a payment plan with the IRS to pay their tax debt over time. So you are basically telling the IRS, listen, I cannot afford to pay the 10 grand you want from me right now, but I can pay it over 2 years, over 3 years, over 4 years, over 5 years. And the one thing I want to say here is that when you actually are going in this agreement, make sure that you are as transparent as possible. Now, there are some benefits that come with filing Form 9465, especially when you're approved. But before I talk about the benefits, I just want to say that it's important to know that interest and penalties will continue to accrue on the outstanding tax debt until it is fully paid, even if a payment plan is established. So, you want to pay off your tax liabilities as soon as possible to minimize the additional cost in terms of penalties and in terms of fines, in terms of interest. Now, let me talk about the benefits of Form 9465. I mean, you have payment flexibility. This is kind of cool. You are able to avoid collection actions. So when you actually set up a payment plan with the IRS will stay all the collection actions. You have a simplified application process. Form 9465 simplifies everything, especially the application process for requesting an installment agreement, because it really outlines the necessary information that taxpayers need to provide, making it easier to understand and complete the form. This is kind of cool. Additionally, and that's what we love about the Form 9465, it really allows taxpayers to propose their monthly payment amounts based on their financial situation, helping to tailor the installment plan to their specific needs. You also have interest reduction. So, while an installment agreement does not eliminate the requirement to pay interest on the outstanding tax liability, it can really help reduce the overall amount of interest accrued. So this is kind of cool. And so by promptly paying the agreed upon monthly installments, you are able to minimize the interest charges compared to other forms of unpaid tax debt. You are able to avoid more drastic consequences. And so you do not want to ignore the tax debt anyway. And you also have an improved cash flow management. So you're able to do things a little better. And you also could have potential relief for low income taxpayers. If you are low income taxpayers, you can have a relief. Let me give you a few pro tips here. So when we talk about Form 9465, it's important to really make sure that you are eligible to file this form in the first place. Because, the IRS is not going to grant an installment agreement request to anybody, any business that really requested, unless there are some eligibility criteria met. So Form 9465 generally has the eligibility criteria mentioned on the screen right now. So you have, for individuals, Form 9465 is generally available for individual taxpayers who owe $50,000 or less in combined tax, penalties, and interest. So the threshold here is $50,000, and it has to be less than that. Okay, that's for individuals. For sole proprietors, self-employed individuals, including sole proprietors, can also use Form 9465 to request an installment agreement. And for businesses, it's totally possible also. So certain small businesses may qualify to use Form 9465 if they owe less than $25,000 in combined tax, penalties, and interest. It has to be $25,000 or less. And in terms of compliance, so before requesting an installment agreement, you must have filed all required tax returns. If you have any outstanding tax returns, you should file them before submitting Form 9465. This is important. So it's important to really note that these are general guidelines and the eligibility criteria may vary based on individual circumstances. Additionally, this is a big if. The IRS has the authority to approve or deny installment agreements on a case-by-case basis. So it's one of those things where you want to make sure you are following through with your tax your tax obligations, to make sure that in terms of the amounts that you're asking, that the amounts are actually reasonable, that also you are able to provide reasonable costs. Because for the IRS to actually approve your installment agreement request, you must provide the IRS, the agency, with reasonable costs. Like, for instance, undue hardship, right? If you are in a situation where paying this amount right away will cause undue hardship to your situation, the IRS might grant you your Form 9465. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about the Form 9465. Let me give you the steps you need to really follow here when it comes to Form 9465. Basically, what you want to do here is that you want to really obtain the form. I mean, the form is pretty straightforward. You can get it from the IRS website, or you can just contact the IRS at 1-800-829-3676, and they will give you the form, not a problem. And so once you get the form, you want to provide your personal information on the form. And I'm speaking about your social, your name, your address. And if you don't have a social, if you have a TIN, like a TIN, a taxpayer identification number, that's fine also. Don't forget to include also your contact information. And you have to really be clear about the tax return information. So you want to specify the tax year for which you are requesting the installment agreement. If you have already filed your tax return, provide the date it was filed and the total amount you owe. If you haven't filed your return yet, indicate that on the form, so you are giving context to the IRS so they know how to direct your request, okay? And you want to choose your installment agreement request. The thing is that the IRS gives you several options in terms of what really works for you. You can choose between a guaranteed, a streamlined, or what they call a non-streamlined agreement. So the instruction of the form on the form will help you determine which option is appropriate for your situation. And then you have to provide your financial information. So we're speaking about your monthly income, your living expenses, your assets. And so this is actually part of what I was just telling you earlier in terms of providing reasonable costs, right? So this information helps the IRS evaluate your ability to pay and determine the appropriate monthly installment amounts. And so then you have to also specify your monthly payments. You have to really show good faith here, right? And so the monthly payment you can afford to pay towards your tax debt, the IRS will consider that and see if it makes sense. So consider your financial situation and propose an amount that's realistic for you. I mean, whatever you propose anyway, the IRS has the authority and has the privilege, if you will, to review your proposal, and they may accept it or suggest a different amount. This is why it's so important to work on something called reasonable cost. And you have to choose your payment method. And before you send everything to the IRS, don't forget to review and sign the form. And you may have to attach the required documents. We're talking here about your financial statements, for instance, or like a proof of income, and just attach them to the form before sending, and then submit. Pretty straightforward. Let me give you a bonus here. If you're still with us, I want to talk to you about some special considerations when filing Form 9465. One thing I want to say here is that in terms of eligibility, make sure that you meet the eligibility criteria for using this form, right? So $50,000 or less in combined individual income, tax, penalties, and interest. And you must be able to pay off the debt within 72 months. So 6 years, that's really the ceiling here, okay? 6 years. So 50,000, that's for individuals. For businesses, it's $25,000, okay? Now, in terms of timely filing, if you filing your tax return on time, even if you can't pay the full amount, it's always good to file on time, because filing your return late can result in penalties, and the IRS may reject your installment plan request if your return is not filed at all, right? So always be on time. And in terms of accuracy, you want to double check the accuracy of the information you provide on Form 9465. It's one of those things where if you have a tax software, just use tax software to kind of help you out, because any errors or incomplete information could delay the processing of your request or result in a rejection, which you do not want anyway. And also, in terms of the payment amount, determine actually the amount you can afford to pay each month towards your tax debts. And it really depends upon you, but in any case, it's always better to go with the direct debit option. That way, you are really automating the whole payment process instead of you remembering to send every month a check, to the IRS. No, it's just better to have this direct debit option, and you are going to be able to pay your taxes as soon as possible. I mean, whatever you owe anyway. And so in terms of the filing deadlines and extensions for Form 9465, it's basically the same thing as your Form 1040. So this is this is actually April 15th of each year. And now, however, if April 15th falls on a weekend or a legal holiday, the deadline is usually extended to the next business day. So you always have this flexibility here. And in terms of extension of time to file, you are able to use a Form 4868. So this is an application for automatic extension of time to file U.S. individual income tax return. And so this is kind of cool. So when you actually file this form, you have an automatic 6 months. So instead of, let's say instead of April 15th, you are able to push things a little further to October 15th. So you have 6 more months. So you are able again to breathe a little bit to gather your documentation before submitting everything to the IRS. Here is that when we talk about Form 9465, there are several ways of filing this form, and everything revolves around what's convenient to you, right? It's all about convenience. So you are able to, you have online filing, for instance. You can file a Form 9465 with the tax preparation software such as H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt. You can have TaxSlayer and so on and so forth. So this is tax preparation software is actually the most convenient way of filing your taxes anyway, based on our experience. So this is kind of cool. But if that doesn't work, you have online filing. So you are able to do things a certain way. This is kind of cool also in terms of, you just go to the IRS websites, and there is actually a section on the IRS website called Online Payment Agreement Application. So what you have to do here is that you have to provide the required information, including your personal details, tax information, and proposed installment agreement terms. So once you do that, you are able to have things done a little quickly and a little more quickly. One thing I want to say is that if you have a balance due, you may need to make an initial payment electronically using the IRS Direct Pay system or another accepted payment method. You always want to show good faith by making a small payment so that the IRS knows that you are for real. You're really serious about bringing the liability down. Okay. And one thing I also want to say here is that if you cannot do online or use tax preparation software, you always have the option of going the good old way, the good old manual way. So offline filing. So you can just obtain a copy of Form 9465 from the IRS, or you can just visit your local IRS office, and you want to fill out the form manually. You want to provide things like accurate and complete information about yourself, your business, if applicable, your financial information, your P&L, your profit and loss statement, okay, your bank statements. So you want to provide as much information about your situation as possible. Make sure to include your personal details, tax information, and proposed installment agreement terms. Okay, and if you have a balance due, you want to attach a check or a money order for the first payment amounts payable to the U.S. Treasury. Okay, and you want to double check the form for any errors or omissions, and you want to sign it. So once you do this, everything is fine, and this is totally fine. Now you have a way also to email the completed Form 9465 along with the payment, if applicable, to the appropriate IRS address listed in the instructions for the form. Now, make sure that you are keeping a copy of the form for your records. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Let's do a quick recap of today's conversation. So I was talking to you about Form 9465. I gave you the overview, the approach, the pro tips, the steps, the bonus, and now the recap. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.